We're
I think
live.
we're live. Hey, everybody. It's Monday night. Thanks for joining us again. Dr. Deb and Dr. Joe back again.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And we have some special guests, some very good friends of ours. We're so excited to have them on. I don't know if you've noticed, but every time we have guests on, not every time, but especially the last few times, very special guests. You guys are a part of an organization that we belong to, of people, of chiropractors, functional medicine docs that we truly look up to and admire as couples, as families, as doctors, as professionals. And this is why we have these guys on tonight. So I want to, would you like to do the intro?
Yeah, I could totally do that. So, it's rare that I have a couple that just really gets down to the fabric and the understanding of what it really is to be not only a wife, but a mother, not only what it is to be a father, but a friend. And, when you start laying those layers and you put them on top of each other, there's usually one or two areas someone will fall short on. And I tell you what, you guys do probably the most amazing job I've ever seen. And it comes from a place of integrity. And this is why I was so excited about this particular week, is because I think the way you guys speak of this and how you speak of this is really going to not only affect people, but I think it's going to my goal is to hopefully take their thinking and put it on its ear a little bit, if you will, and change. So it is an honor and a pleasure not only to be friends with you guys, but to have you on tonight. So thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure for us to be here. We love you guys. What an awesome introduction. Means so much to us.
Thank you.
And you guys are some of our best friends as well. We cherish the moments and the times we get to spend inside of the group, that we get to travel with each other. Joey, you and I are on a call tomorrow morning in an accountability group together. I know Lynn and Debbie are in an accountability group. So our circles are just intertwined and weave together. And super excited to bring whatever you want us to bring tonight. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I think we almost did this as much to have some more time together as it was.
Well, it has been 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly. So hit the 7 pillars again. I want you to just reflect.
Yeah. Okay. So we have Doctors Lynn and Mark here because they really stand out to us in really all of the pillars, but they're really great at the professional or the career pillar. So we have the 7 pillars, meaning the 7 areas of life that we need to focus on and create, I don't want to use the word balance, but create some type of equilibration between harmony between our family time, spirituality, finances, intellect, social, physical fitness and fun, and our professional lives. So we have these guys on here to fill us in on how not only to elevate where you are in your career, but maybe find out where you do belong, where your strengths lie, who you really are as a person, to do what it is that you're meant to do. But before we even dive into that, I really want to reach out to everybody that's watching. And I want to ask you, if you have your mom in the other room, or your kids, or your significant other, a friend, grab them and bring them in, because I promise you, this is not just about professional life. This is about elevating and engaging in a life that's meant for you, figuring out who you are and how you get to step into the life that you deserve and that you should be in.
And I know Lynn and Mark, you guys run a crazy busy office, one of the probably biggest offices in the country. I know chiropractic, and you have your son, Mark, you had at a very early age, is now your associate doctor. And I would love the guys to speak about that and just kind of come from the beginnings of where you were, and then how you've kind of, now you have a daughter, and like how you've gotten to this place of like managing like the craziness, right? Like, because it is crazy, right? And it is nuts. And we're all living this busy life of trying to do different businesses and different things, and we're involved in all these different organizations, and it's awesome, but there is craziness to it. So I would love to hear your guys' perspective on that.
I'll start. You want to start?
Well, I would just say that I want Mark to get into our story, and especially talking about Jordan, and because that is a huge part. When we had him and we made our decision to practice where we do practice, and then into, working together, that was a big adjustment. I mean, but I will say, I want to preface it with saying, from the very first day that we made a commitment to each other, even before we were married, and we knew we were going to be in practice together, we knew we had to make our marriage the first priority, because I think that's where a lot of couples fail. And it can be so easy to do that, is to, you know, like Joey said, you're getting in the day to day and you're so busy. But we had some pretty good mentors, and we've come up with some pretty good strategies along the way that I think allowed us to keep our marriage first and foremost. So.
As you guys know, you guys work together in your practice, and you've done it longer than we have, and I think you've done it very successfully. But I'll tell you, it's hard, because what happens is that balance that you talk about, and I think balance is baloney. I mean, for years, how many of us are guilty of trying to work towards balance? Like, I want balance in everything, all 6 categories. You can't balance all 6 categories. It's not possibly human to do 6 categories of balance. There's going to be things that you put more energy into at certain times in your life. And Lynn and I always tell people I married my chiropractor just like you guys did. I met her at Palmer. She was a year older than me in school. And it was really cool just to see what she was doing. And she was just super smart, beautiful lady that I was so attracted to. And, you know, the very first time we got together, I told her about my son. And that brings up the point of the very first time we spent time together was at Chiro games in Dallas, Texas. And we both went to Palmer, and we'd seen each other before. And I told her I had a son back home. And the very first night I said, anybody that I marry is going to have to go back to where I grew up, because I am a part of his life and he's a part of my life. And that set really that tone of going like, hey, yeah, we are going to stay in Iowa, on the other side of the state of Iowa. And she's from Canada. So that was a huge commitment, that when we did continue to get serious in a relationship, that she was like, yeah, I trust you. I'm not going back to my country. I'm going to stay here. So that's a major commitment that happened on her end to trust me in that aspect. But I trusted her initially because I wanted to open a practice from scratch. And she's like, let's be an associate first. And I was like, no, I don't need that. I'm going to go ahead. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to open my own practice. And maybe we'll get into the entrepreneurs, business builders, and caregivers, the 3 types of chiropractors we see as we help doctors hire the right teams. But what we found is that the doctors we work for, the doctor and his wife we work for, gave us some really cool foundational points of respect. And I know one of those things that we talked about, I'll have her say this one.
Yeah, and just to go back to it, so it was interesting. We joined together, you know, became engaged, and then decided we were going to open our practice. But I am probably classically a caregiver. So we didn't know that. This is 20 years out, and Mark is a business builder. And so he's very comfortable doing that. But I felt like I needed to learn some things first, because he grew up in a family with entrepreneurs, and my family, we didn't do that. We were more, you know, get your degree, go to a job. And so, you know, obviously we've made a success of it, but it was really important. And I think we learned some lessons in doing that. You know, you would say we learned what not to do in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Oh, we did a lot of that.
So I think the question when I hear this is like, you know, you guys found your way to it. And like we talked earlier before we got on the show, I said, you know, it's so important to me. I think the conversations aren't happening at a child's level, at a 8, 9, 10, even earlier level, where these kids are now have this level of expectation of what normal is go to high school, go to college, get a job, be like, and this is like the routine of society, and kind of just get in line and fall in place. And this is what you do. And I think so many children or young kids or young adults are lost in that. And even today, even more so, adults themselves are lost in that. So when you have these 2 ends of the spectrum, how did you guys, give me some strategies or pointers on like how do we talk to these young children? And then yet it's the same really conversation for adults. If someone's in the wrong job or you think they're in the wrong spot in a company or doing the wrong thing, how do you break that cycle? Because often now you have family, you have a house payment, like you're in the minutia. Like, how do you get out of that and pivot and change and kind of live the life that I think some of people aren't just living, that they're destined to live?
Can you take that one?
Yeah. So, you know, like we talked about the 4 rights, the right person in the right job, doing the right role the right way. And so many people, unfortunately, I just see from even patients that come into our practice, they're in a job to produce a living
Right.
and to have benefits. And it's so scary to see that numbing down of what's happened to our society, that literally they have a job to have benefits and to be able to pay their mortgage, and they're just waiting for their day to retire. That scares the heck out of me when it's like that. And I think, unfortunately, has a lot to do with our school systems at this point, is it kind of pushes them that way. And there's part of that population that I would say 50 to 60 are going to be great people that are going to be great at having a job, but you have to have passion about your job, right? Well, they say the average person now switches careers 3.5 times. So if you're not happy in the career you're in, change it. You have the ability to do that. But I would say that it starts at even a younger level. Already with our daughters, we start to have those conversations. She's 14 years old. We started to have those conversations at 8, 9, 10 years old and started to ask her questions. We don't want to project ourselves, and believe me, and she's caught me like projecting on her. Well, this is what I did when I was a kid, and I'm still guilty of that. I think I did it this weekend. Guilty as charged. But she's so great with our daughter, is that she's like, you know what? She needs to make some of those decisions. Let's ask her some questions. And when you start to put them in more of that answering question mode, that Socratic method that I know we use with our patients, right? You do that with our kids, all of a sudden they're smart, right? Mm-hmm. They have the intelligence to do it. Unfortunately, they're just not put in that situation very often because they're so often told what to do and not able to answer a lot of the questions.
And I would think that it goes back to strengths. So Joe and Deb, you guys, the four of us, have had lots of conversations about our strengths. And I know I heard that growing up, and you hear it all the time. It's just something that's, just kind of, it's so prevalent that you need to find out what you're good at and just do it. I never had the language around what exactly did that mean. I kind of thought I knew I was good at some things, but being in my 20s and just starting out in practice, wasn't exactly 100% confident in that. I'll tell you that straight up. So going back about 15 years ago, we had met a mentor of ours who introduced us to an assessment tool through Gallup. It's called Clifton Strength Finders. It used to be known as Strengths Finders. It's now Clifton Strengths. And it actually gives you, through a lot of research and data that they came up with over 50 years, it boils it down to 34 different talent themes. And when you take the assessment, you get an order and you get a top 5. And those are the conversations that we've had. We've had those with your employees, your staff, your interns, because when you get that language around how you're wired, how you get things done, how you form relationships, how you think, and how you influence people. And those are that's the information you get from that assessment. It's a pretty powerful tool. Once you know that and you have that awareness, and you can start to develop it. And people and teams for that matter, you don't need to be well balanced. You do not need to have everything or every tool in the toolbox and be great at everything. You just need to be great and working on improving what it is that you already have that's so strong, how you're uniquely wired.
Yeah. And I think, Mark, you really touched on it. We oftentimes think that we are supposed to be or do certain things because our parents, kind of not knowing, walked us down that path. So we believe that we are supposed to maybe take over a business that our dad had, even though it has nothing to do with what our strengths are, who we are, our personality, where we're really driven, where our creativity is. So we end up doing things because society or a family member or somebody we look up to kind of led us down that path, or we were misguided down a path that we don't belong. So I think it's really important that we've done the strengths test.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and we've actually done it. We get it for all of our interns as a graduation gift because we think it's important to understand who you are. So regardless of whether you're looking for a career or you just want to know who you are so you can feed into your strengths regardless of where you are in life, I just think that's a really key measurable to add into your toolbox of growth.
And I would love to hear some of the questions that you do ask your daughter. And when you get down, I think those are some things that people can take home and put them on the table tomorrow night and have dinner around that conversation, which I think is so powerful.
I'll let you think of some of the things that you do with her because she's so great at it. But what was really cool is She was at a different school in kindergarten and first grade, and we moved from out of town into town. And literally, she said that summer, she's like, well, I'm going to attend a different school. And it's like, she's going to be in second grade. And we're like, you want to go to a different school? She's like, yeah, that school is not for me. I'm going to go to a different school. And we were like, okay, let's go check it out. And sure enough, she's been in that school now for the last 6 years. And now this year, she's an 8th grader. And she came to us probably 3 or 4 weeks ago after our trip together outside in Cabo. And she was hanging out with these other kids that are doing other things. And it's so cool to see just how they're influencing each other for the better, right? Because they're all talking about the schools they're going to and what they're doing. And right now she's at a private Catholic school in our community. But she's like, we got home and she's like, I'm going to go to a different school. I'm going to go over to Marion. And we didn't even know what it was. We had to look it up online. And she had already done the research on it and looked into it. She's like, yeah, I'm going to do this and this and this because it offers these situations. And we're like, okay. So she was on break last week and Lynn took her over to go visit Marion. Now she's got a pretty tough decision as an 8th grader. But how many 8th graders are making a decision to go to a different school, leave all their good friends where there's no drama at all, which is a little scary for dad, to be honest with you. It's 35 minutes away from us to make that decision, but we haven't said yes or no. What we've said is you need to come up with a reason which one you want to go to and really allowing her to make that decision moving forward. But Lynn's awesome at that. I mean, she has these great conversations in the car where they're going back and forth to school, and I'll let her take that.
So you asked about a question. So going back a few years, we actually did the Strengths Explorer, which is the child version of that. And we found out that she has 3, her top strengths, relating. Second was presence, and third was confidence. And they're wider umbrellas. They're not trying to label the kids. They're just trying to point out some what we would call clues to talent. You can observe them in your child, and you can see that there are these things. And then presumably you would encourage them and place them in those situations that would bring more of that out. Mm-hmm. And so we did that, and she's a competitive dancer, and we would get on her because we're, the typical parents, you're spending all this time and money dancing. Don't you want to push yourself to, win competitions or do better or see yourself improve? And when we did that assessment, long story short, it just made us realize, and it was this aha moment, and it was so freeing for her because she's an only child, other than Jordan, which they don't live in the same home because he's older. And she sees her dance family as a second family. And so she was doing this to relate. So going back to your answer about questions, I asked her, well, who'd you eat lunch with today? She's concerned about a relationship. She's a relator. If you have a child who's, maybe more into learning or something. Well, what's
I'm futuristic.
Excited about? Yeah, you ask them questions around what they show you are their interests and what you can see as a parent or as an observer, an aunt or uncle. It's that child's really good at XYZ, and you ask them questions around that and move them into that, and give them confidence around it. You have some early talent in this. Let's get you in. Support in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we were in Cabo, we sat down and we did core values as families around the table, and it was so wild to watch all these kids and in these families sit down, and from all ages, man, from 6, 7 years old to all the way up, and then all the adults did it, and it was so wild. We've done it, I don't know how many times where we've done it, and then we did it again in Cabo. And we literally came home and made some big decisions. We really pivoted and changed because we realized that some of the things we were doing we weren't living through our core values. Mm. And it was so wild to listen to the families and kids because there's a family dynamic of core value, and then there's individual core values of what that is. And at the end of this whole week, we're going to be doing a whole session on core values and vision stories. So it's going to be awesome. Dr. Stu Bernstein's going to do it for us. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. And so, it's cool. But the thing is that I was so fascinated by watching that because I think back, I'm like, how much of a powerful tool that would have been for me to know when I go to hang out with Johnny, am I living through my core value? Or when I want to go to a new school, am I living through my core value and my vision, right? And, I think we underestimate how smart they are and how genius they are living. And when I watched that, it was like a light bulb went off for me, not only for myself, but for that. Like, it was just amazing.
I think it's part of critical thinking. And one of the things that I love about this brain trust that we all belong to, and, you know, you guys all bring the kids and we love hanging out with the kids, is that you bring to your families the things that we're all just learning as adults, and maybe you guys too. I mean, my family didn't know anything about learning what your strengths are. And I mean, it was just kind of the obvious things that we would go by. You like gymnastics, go do gymnastics. Oh, you want to quit gymnastics? Go do something else. Right. And then figuring out what core values are. And it took us a while to really understand what it meant to have a core value.
Yeah. And
what's really cool is what you said there, Joey, is like, once again, we had done them before. We had talked to Lila about them before, but really never included her into putting them together. So it was really neat to see the three of us discuss those as a family. But even like you said, Joey, in your guys' discussion there 2.5 weeks ago, you're like, we came back and we actually pivoted because they can change.
Yeah.
So it's like set it, forget it, right? It's something you need to check back on. And I think that's where, you know, talk about the relationship component. I mean, that's where professionally that what we've really done is that, you know what? It's really easy to be good friends inside of your practice when you're married to your wife and she's your business partner. I mean, we've talked about that a lot of times. People are like, how do you work with your wife? And I'm like, I don't know how I wouldn't work with my wife. But to be honest, I mean, she's up in the business office running the practice because she stepped away from adjusting before our daughter was born to have that freedom to come and go with her. So she runs the front end. I'm in the back adjusting patients, working with our 3 associates, doing patient management. I mean, we cross paths in the office during the day. But I mean, it would be really easy. And I mean, we caught ourselves over the year going like, yeah, your name is Lynn again, right? I mean, it's that conversation. So we've really, really been concentrating on, and just really in the last 6 months, is really spending Friday mornings together for about an hour and a half doing our business meeting and getting the business off the table, talking about the office. Because what can happen, I'm sure a lot of you students out there, for you young parents out that are there, or couples who haven't had kids yet, when you're working together, or I can imagine working apart, what happens is if you don't take those issues and questions and problem solving off the table before the weekend, guess where they end up?
In the weekend.
Yeah.
With your kids, with your family, and that's all you're concentrating on, and that pulls away from your family time. So I guess that would be like the #1 key I would give any student that's going to get married to their chiropractor, or young couples out there that have young kids. Have a breakout with you and your wife or significant other and get it off your plate before the weekend, because there's nothing worse than going into a weekend with a lot of it hanging over your head.
That's been learned through scar tissue, I would say. Like, it makes a lot of sense to people, don't bring work in the bedroom, right? Don't bring work into the bedroom. I always say, or we always say, don't bring work into the kitchen, because that's the most tempting place to just, you know, somebody's cooking dinner and then, you know, you start the conversation. If it's family time, keep it family time.
And then your kid's in the room and you're talking about business. They're bored out of their minds. So next thing you know, they're on their phone doing things like, once again, Lila's never doing anything bad, but still, I'd rather have her listen to a family conversation than a business conversation, unless it's something she can learn from business.
Right.
Right? I mean, bringing her into the conversation, helping her learn something, that's not a problem.
So watch this, something that a lot of people, when I talk with them about it, aside from the fact oftentimes they don't set goals or don't know how to set goals, they don't know what core values are. If family and family time is a core value for you, then when work comes in the kitchen or the phone comes in the kitchen, you know, you can filter what it is that you're doing or you want to do through that core value. Like, does this take away from the family time that we're looking to spend, or does this add to the family time that we're looking to spend?
So going back to our decision, and that because we did that exercise a couple of weeks ago, when we do this decision that we have to actually come up with in the next week or so, we're going to sit down as a family and we're going to filter it through our core values. Just what you said, Joe. Yeah. And I loved that, you know, not to repeat what Mark said, but what you guys said about changing them up. I think that's so important. We've done that over the years. It's almost like a slip and check. Because if you are not acting out of your core values, then chances are they're not actually your core values. I think I learned that from Dr. DeMartini years ago. It's like your actions really show what your values are. And if you want that to switch, then you have to pivot your behaviors and adapt your behaviors.
Yeah, because time does change, circumstances change, And we need to make sure that if we're living through those core values, that we are changing accordingly. Otherwise, we have a tendency to get stuck, which brings me back to the whole professional thing and talking about our strengths. And Mark, you also coach chiropractors as well, helping chiropractors to find offices, finding offices for chiropractors. And what are some of the things that you look for to connect these offices and these docs together, which other people could use in other professions?
Yeah, it's really neat. So I've got a couple of partners, Dr. Stephen Franson and Dr. Alan Miner, in a business called Chiro Matchmakers, and we help. We're not a dating service. I mean, we may come out with that app later, but we're actually helping owners of chiropractic clinics find awesome associates. And what we know from a behavioral assessment is there are really three types of chiropractors, or actually three types of professionals, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
There are entrepreneurs, there are business builders, and there are caregivers. And they're across every single business, especially healthcare professional businesses, right?
Define those, Mark, for me. Like, can you define a little bit of each one? That'd be great.
Sounds great. So yeah, so an entrepreneur is someone who is built to be a business owner, and then they just happen to go to chiropractic school. So they come out as an entrepreneur that happens to be a chiropractor. And a lot of times we see these doctors with large practices, multiple jobs, so forth. A lot of times they're stepping away from adjusting. They're adding team around them and associates at a high level to really run their practices. In our behavioral assessment, we have a licensed behavioral assessment that we use to place right. And there's 4 cornerstone traits of behavior. They are take charge, people trait, patience trait, and then systems trait, okay? And an entrepreneur has high dominance, high extroverted, and they're always low patience and low systems. And what that means is I agree with you, right? I hate details. I need somebody to actually follow through and execute. So you get a bunch of entrepreneurs in the same room in the same business. If they don't have executors, they don't go anywhere, and that business crashes, even though they have brilliant ideas. So what we do is we help to a lot of entrepreneurs and business builders is this next category. They're more supportive and take charge. They're not the dominant personality. They lead by extrovertedness, right? They're business builders because they can build a business. In chiropractic, they can own offices, and they usually have high patience, high conformity. But what they are great at is they're great at moving people along through their extrovertedness, right? They move through their leadership, not just their dominance. And then the caregiver is the person who goes to school because they want to be a doctor, right? They have doctoral, they love to diagnose and adjust and take x-rays and re-exam. They're supportive, they're more reserved. They love one-on-one relationships. They love need. They build a practice through conversion and really retention, right? Long-term, they love details, they're loyal, they're disciplined. So when doctors come to us as owners and they're like, hey, what I want to do is, I have a really busy office. I want to be able to bring somebody alongside of me for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to help me grow my family practice. What we do is we really help them build out what we call our caregiver model, or their avatar for a caregiver. And then we go help them find these types of doctors to come inside of it. Because you guys know as well as I do that when we were going to school 20 years ago, to be successful, what did you need to do? You needed to open your own practice. And if you don't open your own practice, you're not successful. Yeah. Well, numbers in our stats show now through our behavioral assessment, now over 5.5 years and over 4,000 of these things being done, is that 60 to 65% of chiropractors are now actually built to be caregivers. Yeah. They should open their own practice. They should work with other chiropractors to be successful. And unfortunately, I guess you can say, is you see this in the medical model, right? At a hospital, what do they have? They have a bunch of people in administration on a board who are entrepreneurs, business builders, on their board to run the hospital. And who's taking care of patients? A lot of caregivers who don't want anything with running the business, nor should they. Why are they so successful? Because they have the right people in the right jobs doing it the right way, right? Chiropractors, we just get that right. We will wrestle away this healthcare situation, but we need to line up and we need to be accepting of all 3 parts inside of this. That's what Chiro Matchmakers is about. We are about aligning great doctors, great offices with great team members, as in CAs and office managers and associates, to make sure we have the most impact in our communities we can have.
And think about how freeing that is. That's awesome, Mark. Thank you so much. I think about how freeing it is for not only the doctor that's hiring, but for the doctor that's getting hired. Like, you know that this piece of puzzle goes to this piece of puzzle, and it's a fit. And this is why I think this conversation is so important, is because think of, like, if you have a child that's going into a career or thinking about going into a career, and they're clearly understand their strengths and their core values, they're now looking for that piece to put themselves into, right? Whether they are a caregiver, a business builder, or an entrepreneur, they're looking for a piece instead of just going to the piece that may feel like it fits and kind of wiggle themselves into it, which is often what happens in people and society. So I love that analogy. I think that goes across the board. It goes up and down, inside out. I think it handles all the business areas that we're talking about professionalism.
Yeah. And going through the aches and pains of not knowing things like this before, we just jumped into business and didn't know where we stood and all of that. We have taken that, and we, like you guys, love to watch other chiropractors grow. So we coach these young students, and we use tests like both of them. We use the strengths test and the PDP that you're talking about to help them to figure out what if they should be going into practice or associate or go into franchise, because there are options. And at least as far as a chiropractor is concerned, like, we had no idea there were options, right? You just go out and you open your practice, and then you find out all the things that it takes to run the practice. And it's like, oh, and then you're doing this.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. No, let's do this. No, let's do that. No, we should do it this way, but I don't want to do it that way, right? If we only had, like, once again, what I will say is, like, if we would have had the knowledge of what we had now, it would have fast forwarded our careers 2, 3, 4 times if we knew that, right? It would exponentially. We have this knowledge now. So if you have questions, reach out. Let us help you out. I don't care what industry you're in. I mean, we can pro scan anybody and find out how you're built, right? And see what you're great at.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I had a horrible associate experience. And it really was, as I look back, he didn't have a clue what to do. He just was like, I think I want a doctor to come in. I didn't know what type of practice I wanted. It was my first job out of school. And it wasn't successful. And it ended, with leaving me with a bad taste in my mouth. And I'm sure, obviously, I left him, and he was hoping I would stay. And so
after 3 months,
yeah,
I mean, it was terrible.
Just not a great situation because it wasn't a fit. It wasn't aligned. And so I just think it could help our profession on such a wide scale to get that right. Because these students need to learn. They need doctors who are invested in teaching them, who have the right expectations with the doctor coming in, and vice versa. Obviously doctors need associates to help grow their practice. So
yeah, what's really cool is we've come up now in Chiro Matchmakers, there's 12 different tracks that a doctor can go down. There are 12 different options. I think most people only know of 1 or 2, like 2 options. I'm either going to open my own practice or I'm going to go be an associate. But there's different types of associates. And if the owner understood these options, they can make it a win-win when these young students that come out, because the last thing we want is students moving and selling pharmaceuticals 5 years down the road because they've been burnt inside of our profession. We've seen this happen time and time again for the last 10 or 15 years, right? If we just, and I know I got to appreciate you guys. I mean, you guys are in Atlanta. How many interns haven't you brought in? I don't know if you said 60 or 70 or 80. I don't know what it was. How many?
That's amazing, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, what you guys are doing inside of your practice, I almost get the chills when I say that. I did get the chills because I wish I had a practice that was close to a school that we could bring up these young kids. We're 5 hours from Palmer, unfortunately. I probably could still work, but not like what you guys are doing there. So I commend you guys for building foundations and opening young eyes. So you guys should pat yourselves on the back because you guys have been awesome at that for 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Well,
it's really been a great experience for us. It's hard. It's really hard, but it's great. To
wrap this up, I think the reason we're doing this is because I think impressions are like a fingerprint and they're unique to everybody, but they last, right? And once you have it, you have it. And once you see it, you see it. And, understanding some of these parameters that we're going around and just taking a tidbit out of each thing, I truly think it could change your trajectory of what you're doing, your vision, your self-awareness, your business, your family. And to me, it's so important. You know what? I think we're put on this earth for a short time and we have to do as much as we can to pour into others and get the best out of each other. And it's exciting for me. You know what? Like, I'm tired. Mark, you worked all day too. Like, you come home to run in and do this. Like, we're literally eating on the go and come in here and do this. But you know what? It's important, right? Because the message it needs to be heard more than ever before. Ever before do I think this message needs to be heard from a person's perspective up to an adult perspective. So
we don't know what tomorrow brings, but if you're solid in your foundation of who you are, what you stand for, what you're willing to do, put up with and not, then it's a game changer.
It is.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you so much for being great friends. And thank you so much for your insights, because and being an example of what it is to be great parents, great professionals. And you guys do an amazing job at it. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you guys.
We love and appreciate you. Can't wait till the next time we're together for sure. And let us know if we can help any way we can along the way.
Yeah, we'll post up Chiro Matchmakers on the site so people can jump on there and grab that.
Yes,
we'll put up the strength finders, and we'll put all that stuff up there for you guys. So anybody's interested in getting on that stuff, they can grab it that way.
Good stuff. All right.
Awesome. Good night, guys.
Till next time.
Until next time.